What's up? We are back with another session of the Sisters in Therapy podcast, and today we are talking about emotions. Emotions.
Taking me over.
Okay, but emotions make you cry sometimes. That is the title of this session right here. Okay, so we're going to define emotions.
Yes.
The physical and mental states brought on by neurophysiological changes variously associated with thoughts, feelings, and behavior responses, and a degree of pleasure or displeasure. I would have to say that there's a lot of words, but in layman terms, because it's in my notes,
Go for it.
emotions are reactions that human beings experience in response to events or situations.
Yes.
The biggest myth that we have been told is that women are more emotional than men.
Yeah, let's
That
let
is a
go.
lie, and it's also not true. Nobody's more emotional than nobody.
Exactly.
So that is a big myth, for sure.
We might express them differently.
Yes,
But everybody has them because we're all people.
all people. So I'll start with first. We just want to kind of emotions get a bad rep. Like they just get a bad rep. They're really not your enemy at all. They're beneficial to you. So I'm going to start off with just talking about some of the basic emotions, and then we'll move into like debunking the myths about emotions and things
Okay.
like that. And so happiness is a basic emotion, and the facial expression people make when they're happy sometimes is smiling. The body language is relaxed, and the tone of voice is upbeat, pleasant way of speaking. Another basic emotion is anger. Anger gets a bad rep. But anger is characterized by feelings of frustration, hostility, agitation. Body language is a strong stance. People turning away, maybe trying to get away from you. The tone of voice is yelling sometimes and speaking gruffly or just kind of short. Some of the feelings people feel, physiological, sweating, turning red, or aggressive behavior such as kicking, hitting, or throwing. Anger plays a part in your body's fight or flight response. Notice how these are two different types of emotions, anger and happiness. So when people say that something or someone is too emotional, it never makes sense to me because their emotions are not just about things that are angered or sadness. It's also joy, it's also happiness and things like that. So what do y'all think people say, you're too emotional? You're too emotional.
You mean like what do we think people mean when they
Yeah,
say
why is that such a default statement for people?
Because people don't know how to handle unpleasant emotions, things that make them uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so an easy out is you're too
Okay.
emotional.
So that means that we're miseducated on what emotions are. We have decided that emotions only mean sadness, somebody being sensitive, or
Absolutely.
somebody being just depressed or something like that. Not any of the other things
Nope.
that pleasure.
They completely discount all of those.
Those
Yeah.
things are emotions, and we all have access to these things, but somehow we've made our minds up that this is only something that one gender experiences,
Right.
and that gender, because they are this, that they cannot do a lot of things because they are too emotional. It's the biggest piece of
I mean,
shit I ever heard.
yes, bullshit actually, because impulsivity is an emotion.
I always say that.
Everything is an emotion. I think people, like you said, all of it gets a bad rap, and I think people just don't want to. They want to avoid it altogether. They just want to solve the problem without.
Which is still an emotion.
It is still an
itself.
emotion, but like to solve it before processing, I think.
It's
I just
also
think we're
very
miseducated.
gendered.
It's very gendered though.
Yeah.
But y'all never say a person who is angry and throwing a fit, who is a male, is too emotional.
He just passionate. That's all. He passionate.
Or being a boy. But I just want to know what y'all thought about that. Because though there are so many myths about emotions, and one of the biggest ones is, women telling me that even their sons are telling them that they're too emotional. And I'm like, what makes
does
you
that
too
mean?
emotional? Emotions is a category. And then anger can be thought of as a negative emotion, but I don't necessarily see that as a true case. Anger, like all emotions, can be constructive in helping you clarify your needs.
Yes.
In relationships, in friendships, at work, in traffic, all these
That's the
things.
purpose of emotions.
Exactly. It's all valid. It's really a matter of what you do with it, right? Like you can be
Yes.
angry. Something can piss you off. That does not mean that gives you a right to put your hands on somebody
Right.
unless you're defending yourself.
Right.
But that made me angry. That pissed me off. Let me take a minute to see how I want to articulate or explain to this person how they make me feel.
That's the negative aspect of anger, when the behavior becomes harmful to yourself or to
Absolutely.
other people.
Yes.
That is negative, but someone being mad or angry does not mean that they're being negative. It's just an emotion.
Right.
But that is what's taught. I have plenty of clients who say that they were taught that this was a bad thing to feel, like they couldn't be upset in their home. They couldn't be sad. They couldn't be mad, or else they were being almost like bad or being negative just because they were experiencing an unpleasant emotion.
Right. And I think that's why people who are naturally sensitive or who cry when they're like trying to express themselves are frustrated because they're like, I don't want to, because that's a sign of weakness. I don't want to cry. I just want to say what I want to say. But like, what if you could cry and say it?
Right.
It's not the end of the world. Now I get it if from what you explain, like if it's childhood experiences where like you're constantly dismissed or told to not have something or be mad about something or I'm gonna give you something to cry about. But I think people in general just are uncomfortable with it and it's too vulnerable and they don't know what to do with it. And I think once you don't, and I think it's overwhelming because people don't always process, it ends up being an overwhelming experience. So they just avoid it altogether. So yeah.
Okay. I think one of the most common emotions that we feel as humans would be fear. It's a powerful emotion. It plays a role in survival. Feelings of scared is kind of how they describe fear. We all experience fear differently, though. I think that some situations are not life-threatening. You may feel fear of like going out for a new job or a new position, or sometimes you feel fearful when you are in a life-threatening situation. And so that is also considered a basic emotion. Facial expressions, they say, will be like wide eyes. Body language is more so just stuck and timid. And then the physiological would be just rapid breathing, and the physical and mental avoidance from situations. So mentally, I'm not going to go out for the job. I'm just going to talk myself out of it. Physically, I'm going to avoid maybe places where I feel like I'm scared to be. But let's speak a little bit about fear and how it gets in the way of other things. What do you think fear gets in the way of for most people or people you've seen like in your therapy practice?
Maybe it's just the population that I work with, but as soon as you said fear and what it gets in the way of, I immediately went to sex and pleasure.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Okay, talk about it.
Just because there is self-conscious. A lot of folks are self-conscious about it. Also, there are religious perspectives that they've been taught about certain positions or things that they want to do that are not godly or good, or they're worried about their body or smell, or if the person is having a good time. And so there's all of these different fear aspects that pull them away from being fully present in the moment. And so sometimes that makes them not even want to start to have sex or engage in sex. And other times it makes them not have a mindful and present experience to fully feel the pleasure that could come from sex because they're so worried or fearful about all of these other pieces.
Okay. And so I would say that most of your clients who have this issue are women.
Yes.
This is not new information about women in regards to something such as fear keeping them from enjoying something such as sex. This is why emotions are important, though, because typically what you would do as a therapist is help your clients process this fear and explore it, because emotions are they guide us.
Yes,
Right,
that is the
absolutely.
purpose. So when we talk about emotions, I think it's important to talk about that all emotions have a purpose.
Yes.
They're here to guide us and tell us. I tell people all the time, if it's you experience joy or pleasure, your emotions are telling you, you like this, do more
Right.
of this.
Right.
If you're uncomfortable, if you feel uneasy, sad, that is your body and mind's way of telling you, you don't like this. You need less of this.
Less of this.
They're
I like
tools.
what you just said. Lord, clip that up. I really like what you just said. There is a thing, and I myself as a therapist understand that emotions, I can say that they're complicated.
Oh,
They are.
absolutely.
Very much so.
They can come to you, and you just like, I'm not ready to go here. Like, you got
Right.
to have an internal
Hello?
dialogue with yourself.
Yes.
Like, I'm not ready to go here.
Correct.
Right.
But something I found myself wondering about: emotions versus feelings.
Okay, talk to me.
Because I think they're used interchangeably for sure, but
They are.
emotions start out as the sensation in the body, and the feelings is how you interpret those emotions. So I think like you feel something like sadness, and then as a response to that, your feeling could be anger. is what they were saying. Although both of those things are emotions, but that's what I was reading. I was like, this is interesting. I think that
Oh, okay. That one leads to the
one could lead to the other.
Okay.
Even though it could be used interchangeably, because the emotion could be like the initial sensation, and then the feeling is the lingering thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No,
That
that
makes-
absolutely does make sense.
That makes sense. So I've never heard it explained in that way, but I have heard it explained in the way where they talk about like a secondary emotion, but that would be the feeling or the lingering thing. It's like, what's the thing that's on the surface that you're left to kind of deal with?
It's like
Right.
the chicken or the egg.
navigate.
Which one
Yeah.
comes first?
Right.
And the research is saying emotions come first. It's the initial, then the feelings come after the emotion chemicals go to work in your body. Then moods develop from a combination of those feelings. It's all working together.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It really is.
It takes work for me to explore my emotions and understand my feelings as I navigate the day to day. Always.
Yes.
So I know it's harder for people who are not even in this field. That's why I think it's important for us to relearn what all of this really mean and kind of stop saying things that don't make sense.
Exactly. And just be a human. We're not robots. We're not meant to be these linear beings. Like we're so expansive and we experience things all the time. And I think people are just simply afraid.
I was gonna say that they're uncomfortable with the unknowing. People want to know
Yeah.
things for certain,
Yeah.
and so I think it's uncomfortable to take a curious approach about
Yes,
themselves
that's
in
a good
almost
point.
anything in life. So they're that way with emotions as well. Of just allowing yourself to kind of sit with it and explore and see. We want to know for certain because anything else is uncomfortable.
Right.
But you have to trust yourself to be able to navigate it, or at least that you're going to have the resources
That's
and
the thing,
support to
though.
navigate it.
People don't trust themselves.
I think my biggest push for wanting to talk about emotions is just so that people can understand that you are going to feel emotions, and it's not
Do you ever
gendered.
not feel them?
No, even not feeling them is feeling them.
Right.
That's what I'm
But
trying to tell.
that's what's-
Even not feeling them is still feeling them. It's called avoidance.
Correct.
That is also a feeling.
Exactly.
So all of these things work together. So many people on social media have these motivational quotes telling people to take their emotions out of it, and I took my emotions out, so then I start moving differently. I'm like, you're literally using your emotions to take your emotions out of it.
Exactly.
Your
You're
brain-
using your wise mind, but your emotion mind was a part of making that decision.
Exactly.
Because it didn't feel good. I'm afraid.
Afraid.
So therefore I won't.
You
Yes.
used it as a tool to navigate the situation in a way that better serves you.
100%.
That's what they're there for.
That's what they're there
Exactly.
for.
Good
So
job.
Right? You did it, but not in the right way.
but like your brain is not your enemy.
Right.
Your emotions can be an asset to your life.
They absolutely
But I
are.
think it feels like an enemy because people they've not practiced it or got comfortable enough to, it's not as simple as it's just an emotion. I don't have time for it. It's too complicated.
I don't
I'm
know what it
afraid.
is.
I
is
don't know
they
what
need
it
to say.
is, and I also don't know what's on the other side once I do take a step back and start reflecting.
I don't know what's
there,
on the other
I
side.
don't. There's always this fear of if I start to slow down, what does that look like, and what does that mean for my life? What becomes more apparent as I slow down and really start looking around on what's happening in front of me?
I had that one. I ain't gonna lie. That shit was hard.
Wait. When you have that,
That before I started therapy, that because you're especially I think for Black
self-aware.
women, or also just if you're always on the go for something, always in pursuit of something, there is this, and I see it even in my clients, is what's going to happen if I stop and pause. Like, you give yourself to feel it a little bit, but how deep are you actually going in on it? And that there is, I think, for me and for many others, there was this fear of, like, I don't want to break. Like, you can't afford the time, the space, or what it'll cost if you really sit with this. But I've learned for myself and witnessing my clients, you can't afford to actually not
no.
Right.
sit with it
And why
do
can't
something
you?
with it.
Why can't you afford to not sit with it?
I don't
Because
think
it
there's
doesn't go anywhere.
It
It's still
intrudes your
gonna be
life
there.
later.
right.
Everywhere,
different setting.
in every aspect. I tell people it's almost like the thing at TSA when you put your baggage in and it goes through. Your emotions are like the baggage. If you don't process it, if it doesn't go through this thing, eventually you can keep putting shit on there. Eventually it's gonna pile up. It doesn't go anywhere unless you process it.
No.
Go ahead, Bree.
No, I was just gonna say I think we also don't give ourselves enough credit in our
yeah.
ability to, like, yes, I understand the fear, but it ends up not being this world shattering experience of like, if I start slowing down, does that mean I can't function anymore? Like we're a little bit more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, I think.
I agree. And I think that's part of the work that I end up doing around emotions and normalizing them and normalizing that you can take the time and space to sit with them is really going back and looking at the times in their lives to when they have been resilient. And so that they can see that there is evidence that they can trust themselves to deal with hard things because they already have.
Right.
Okay. So there's we've been kind of speaking about some of the, I guess, the more uncomfortable emotions. But then there's joy, happiness, and
many
pleasure.
nice emotions.
Those things I think that people don't have a problem with accessing, but somehow when somebody is I take that back. I stand corrected. But those are not things that people typically look at as an emotion when they're telling somebody that they're being too emotional, because they're technically insulting you when they're telling you that you're being too emotional.
For sure.
Or you're bringing something to their attention that is letting them know that they have hurt you. So they're saying you're being too emotional. And I think people say that as a way to rob themselves of accountability for bringing pain or harm to somebody that they love or care about.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Right.
Yep. They definitely are avoiding accountability.
What were you about to say about joy, happiness, and those type of pleasurable feelings and emotions?
Just that there is so much of that to gain and there's so much of that to be had. And I think that that is such a liberating and revolutionary way to really live life and navigate the world, because these are beautiful things. And you're here and you have to work and you have to survive, and life is hard enough on its own. And so I would really encourage everybody to really hone in on and nurture these beautiful parts of pleasure and joy, because they are there in abundance.
You know,
Get you some.
Brene Brown was speaking. She speaks highly about emotions and things like that. And she asked somebody, what do you think is the hardest emotion for humans to access? And they was like, not access, but to experience, like fully. And they was like, oh, like pain and sadness and shame. And she's like, no, it's joy and happiness. It is the hardest thing for people to sit with and have.
Yeah.
Why
That's
do you
what
think
she
that
said.
is?
Because we're so used to being let down that we're just kind of waiting for the cat to come out the bag. Like, I'm too, because people say, oh no, something about to go wrong. I'm too happy.
Yeah, I think
People
it's
say it all
also
the
like they
time.
don't believe they deserve it either. Because
It's just
what
that-
have I done?
One,
Yeah.
I don't think they believe they deserve it. On the other end, I've seen it. It's also that they don't want to deal because they feel like it's an inevitable heartbreak that's going to come
Yeah.
after the fact.
Looking around
and
the
so that's a
corner.
part of like living in vulnerability, is that, hell yeah, that might happen. But are you going to rob yourself of the present joy and pleasure that is very real and very, very present in this moment?
Right. I wonder-
Being present is a skill that we must learn to master.
Yes.
And we are going to enjoy our time on this earth.
Yes.
Because there will always be something. There is
Always.
always something, right? There has always been something since like 2020. For sure. Back to back to back to back. So being present and zooming in, we're going to have to try to do that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And a part of that too is not saying it's not true that something always happens, and it's not true that something never happens, right? So like you have to balance your perspective. And I forgot what you said, but I wonder if we could like sort of segue into triggers, right? Like when people are triggered by something that they feel like they're healed from their perspective, they feel like they've regressed.
Yes, that's
So
a good
if you
segue.
view yourself as, or emotions are just emotions, then it becomes a little bit of a simpler task of like, okay, hold on, my nervous system is starting to feel like it used to feel before I started practicing the tools
Okay.
to manage things.
I would say that just because you master how to manage an emotion doesn't mean that it won't get the best of you a different day.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, I think it's valid for something to trigger you and for you to feel like, okay, I thought I worked past this, but again, emotions are tools. They're letting you
Exactly.
know that, hey, this thing that you thought you was over is still here. It's not that you're not doing the work.
Right.
It's not that you have not made any progress. It's just that you don't just get over bad shit that happened to you.
Right. On top of that, the fact
You
that
don't
you
get over it.
Nor
Right.
should you, because it's a part of your survival. So
Right.
if this
Exactly.
same thing is coming up for you again around this other strange person or this same place,
Right.
it is there to protect you.
Exactly.
Literally. So you probably need to move around.
Or to make you check in with yourself.
Yes.
Exactly. I was just about to say the fact that you recognized it means that something good is happening
That's
versus
true.
avoiding like before.
That's true.
So
yeah.
emotions are just emotions.
They're not your enemy though.
They're not. I want more people to know that. Are they scary? Yes.
I
They
think
can be
that
scary sometimes.
emotions are scary, but I'm also like a big believer of telling people like you have to feel it.
Yes.
Because if you don't, I do believe that this stuff can make you sick.
Yes.
Especially
'Cause it will.
It will.
the more so uncomfortable emotions, the things you're not processing. I do believe that the body keeps the score and that these things will make you ill.
Yeah.
Very ill.
I
Yeah.
agree, and it does. And there's
Physically
plenty of
ill.
there's plenty of research and evidence that goes that there are
Talk to me, Dr. T.
Consequences.
I
So-
saw you. I saw the face you made. That means you about to get in your bag.
oh, if you don't make me forget.
Hyping her up.
So what were you saying? Oh, run that back.
Is she
What
in
was you
her
saying?
bag?
She's in her bag. Oh, I was saying we have to before I said what I said, I was talking about we have to master the skill to
Yeah,
be present.
That was it.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
was saying, so how do you because I see a lot of my clients struggle with this. What do you do for yourselves to intentionally check in on what you're feeling? Or do you have a process of that? Because I think this is a thing. We talk about emotions and this awareness of them, but also life is busy and we're not necessarily like, oh, what emotion now? What emotion now? So what is y'all's process for being intentional with checking in?
Question.
I think if I had to put a routine or a process in mind, it would be getting up in the morning. And when I do get up, I tend to just sit on the side of the bed for a minute before doing anything. That's kind of my thing. And most of my check-ins are about this knee pain. I'm gonna just be honest. So
We don't know what y'all need.
I'm old. That's all. So I do. My check-in is really how my knee feel when I wake up in the morning. See, it's popping, but that's probably one of my biggest check-ins. How does my knee feel this morning? Because I'm probably about to go to the gym. So that's a check-in for me. How my knee feels, and depending on how my knee feels, I'm gonna do some type of leg stretch for my knee. So mine is more of a physical check-in, probably than a mental check-in. Does that make sense?
It does.
It does.
What about for big emotions that you might experience through the day, whether you're in your personal life or your
Okay.
clients? You feel big emotions, pleasant or unpleasant.
I do.
How do you check in with those or acknowledge those?
I feel big emotions all the time. One, because I'm gonna get on social media every day. You said you know.
We all have emotions.
Your face was like, I know this girl didn't.
Wait, what? Did she just come from me?
Yeah, she
I'm a
did.
Pisces.
I would never.
I'm a Pisces. Okay, but yeah, so I feel big emotions every day, and I'll say that because if I get on social media and I see babies being decapitated, I'm gonna feel a big emotion.
Me too.
And if I see black people getting killed by the police or just anything, or just stupid comments, so I check in with myself to say, girl, do you need to not read the comments today? That's tend to be where I feel my biggest emotions because social media is like the news. And so honestly, there are some stupid people.
Yeah. And they would drive you crazy. if
These
you entertain
internet
too
people,
much.
like, it'd be a lot. It'd be some nasty comments, and I
Yes.
just be appalled that people can say this type of stuff they're saying about other people.
Yeah.
And that really give me a big rise. And then sometimes I'll get Twitter fingers and trigger fingers, and I start talking to them, calling people imbeciles. Instagram done told me that I cannot call people that no more. But sometimes I do. They said I couldn't cuss, so then I started calling people an imbecile. But then they said I can't use that word
That
anymore.
is the word of the day.
What?
Because that is so adult. To say imbecile.
I can't
Oh
use
my
it.
God. Dr. Mercedes, ladies.
They
and
flagged me.
gentlemen.
They flagged me and said I can't
They
use
said
it.
you have Trump.
I done told you.
I didn't think the AI bots would flag
This
this.
is wrong answer.
This comment looks similar to other comments that people have been using. Please check your
What then would
comments.
you say, idiot?
I try not to say that.
I do.
But then,
Idiot.
but they wouldn't let it, my point is, social media get a big rise on me when it comes to my emotions.
You all are imbeciles.
I don't
Okay?
like when people are stupid. I don't
neither.
like misogynistic people. I don't like misogynoir. I don't like racist people. I don't like men who talk ill about women's sports for no reason.
Right.
All these things. Big rise of emotions.
Period.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if I would say I necessarily feel big emotions, but like I used to be a super anxious kid, so like I feel it physically, and then I know something's happening. Like, I feel a little shifty. Like my heart, either my palms start getting a little sweaty, and it's like, okay, girl, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Do we need to like step away for a second? Like, what's going on?
So yours is a bodily awareness.
Yes,
To check in
for
with yours.
for the anxiety in particular.
That's
and
a
then
good one.
for joy, I also feel it physically. Like, oh, this feels good. And it usually is as simple as that. And that will either encourage me to like go outside. Like it guides the behavior for me. Or I'll text or I'll call because like it's got me, it's like the adrenaline is running of like, let's feel this more and do things that
I know that's
encourage
right.
it more. So yeah. What about you,
I
girlfriend?
like that one. My process is usually like meditation for my kind of bodily check-in. I do a lot of body scans just because we sit down a lot whenever we're doing therapy. And so I will scan my body from head to toe
Like that.
and make sure I am relaxing all of my muscles from here to there. I have this thing that I tell my clients all the time. It's called wet noodle. It sounds silly, but that
heard
means
it
you
before.
can remember the silly name too. So, and you can do it anywhere and it's safe and nobody has to notice. And you literally just say wet noodle to yourself and you like,
Yeah.
Isn't that
just
kind of
let
progressive
everything go.
muscle relaxation?
yes, it's a
Essentially.
progressive muscle relaxation. You tighten everything
Okay,
and
gotcha.
then
and then slowly release
Yeah.
versus wet noodle is just, no matter where
let-
you're at, just
Yeah. I like
relax
that.
everything.
I like that.
Yes, because I have you definitely unclench your jaw, Mercedes moments.
Ooh, that's a big
the
one.
time.
Yeah.
Unclench your jaw.
I like you feel it physically. It's like, girl, like, hold on.
Yeah.
all the time.
Drop them shoulders. Yeah.
Yes.
That bodily awareness has probably helped me be able to navigate my stressors so much better just because I'm able to think clearer whenever my body is more relaxed. And I tell my clients all the time, you can't sit there and tell your mind to be relaxed or that everything is fine while your body is tight, because your body is going to be sending messages to your mind that you are in fight or flight and you're in survival mode. And so then your mind and body have this real disconnect and you're not going to feel relaxed or be able to problem solve maybe in the way that you want to. So you kind of got to get them on the same page, or even if your mind is frantic, at least relax your body so that you can manage that a little bit better.
And obviously, these are things that people can do when they are in stable conditions. If you are in crisis situations in your life, it could be really hard
That's a
to
good
have
one.
this type of emotional awareness and to try to apply these tools to it.
Absolutely.
Do
Which
you want
is,
to speak to that a little bit?
I was about to say, but this is also why when you do get to this like healed version, like you practice these things all the time, no matter how well you get. Because if you go into a crisis moment and you haven't been practicing these things, your recall for them is not going to be there. You're not going
Right.
to be able to utilize it.
That's the
Right.
routine and structure part that comes in, having that proactive kind of foundation of self work that you do. Okay. I want to talk about some stupid things that people say about emotions.
Imbeciles.
No. But one of my favorites that y'all say, take your emotions out of it.
That's crazy.
y'all say.
That's crazy.
That y'all
work.
say. Take your emotions out of it. And I'm
So
literally,
how do I do that?
but it's literally like these are motivational quotes. It's so funny because the company's like, yeah, you right, 100. I'm like, nope, they're not right.
Because you're not right.
And then I comment and say why they're wrong, and they're like, you know what, that's true, but I mean, just go with it.
No. No, I'm not gonna just go with it because it literally doesn't make sense.
It is impossible to take your emotions out of anything.
Yeah.
I know that people think that when they make a rational decision, you still utilize your emotional strength to do so.
You're using some sense of intelligence to
Yes,
be logical.
That is literally you tapping into your emotions. But another one that y'all say, I took the E off emotions and now I got motion.
I ain't never heard
I
that.
see these on social media. I wrote them
what that-
down.
I was
What
like,
that
who
means?
are these people?
These are motivational speakers.
See, I just be following like licensed.
And then
Not no.
a
shade.
oldie but goodie, catch flight, not feelings.
I like that one though. No, I'm playing.
I mean, I love a good flight, but you
you
put
both.
your emotions on
You
the
can
flight,
catch-
and that's probably
'cause
why
you
you
know
catching
what?
the flight.
If I'm catching the flight, that means I'm excited, and that is an emotion.
Exactly.
Because I'm going somewhere.
I know y'all probably tired of me ranting about this type of stuff. However, everything is an emotion.
Literally everything. Literally everything is an emotion. When you see your homeboy, you excited to see your homeboy. Like
That's
when you
an
see
emotion.
your girls, like you excited to see people. If you mad at somebody, your boss pissed you off. Those are emotions. Like we experience so many different things in life. It is not true to say that you don't have any emotions at all. Because
Or-
we experience something.
Or there's no reason also to dull them, which I tell folks all the
Right.
time too, is that so we have this emotion wheel, we have maybe these unpleasant emotions on one side and these pleasant emotions on the other. The more and more you try to dull the unpleasant emotions, you don't get to pick and choose. You're going to dull your ability to experience them all.
Right.
So allow yourself to experience them all so that you can also get this full, beautiful, beautiful array of pleasant feelings like
Right.
pleasure, joy, happiness.
I think too, people have to really get out of categorizing negative and positive
Woo, girl.
emotions because
Almost got up at this seat.
That's why I say pleasant and unpleasant, because they're not negative
Right.
or positive, but them hoes do be unpleasant.
exactly.
It's definitely not. That's a word, Brie, because
Yeah.
that would go along the line with the toxic positivity from motivational speakers and life coaches, because you won't always be positive.
No, and stop forcing yourself to be Just call a spade a spade. This is an unfortunate circumstance that you're in.
The immediate need to go right back to positivity as your default is literally you not feeling your emotions.
Exactly.
There is nothing
Or
wrong with
trying
things
to.
being. There's nothing wrong with positivity though.
Right.
But I like to say maybe healthy and maybe unhealthy, or helpful and not helpful when it comes to emotions.
But they're all helpful because
Okay,
they're
you're
all
right.
tools.
I think
They're
I may
all
be thinking
tools.
about thoughts, but
Yeah, okay.
I might be thinking about thoughts
That's
now.
fair.
But I don't like when the negative and healthy. I mean, negative and positive emotions things. I don't really tend to go there.
Right. Because even when clients, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Brie.
I was gonna say even I help clients work through that when they like, oh, I'm trying to think positively. Well, let's take
girl.
a step back for a second. Let's just process what it is. How about we just not categorize it and let's just process the experience?
Or the emotions.
Or
So
the
that you
emotion.
don't get in the habit of invalidating yourself.
Exactly. Or thinking
Facts.
that you're not doing well. You're living life and just experiencing different things.
There's an obsession with positivity in a way that is not positive
Or healthy, really.
or healthy.
Yeah.
I love a good vibe. I love a good time. I love joy. But this obsession when people bring up something and everybody think they're being negative is ridiculous.
It really is. And I think, shoot, I forgot my point. I think that's when we practice avoidance.
Yes.
And we don't call a thing a thing. If somebody is calling out a behavior, they're not overreacting. They're calling out the behavior.
And they're not being sensitive.
Right.
They're calling out the behavior.
Just chill out.
Or if you keep posting about genocides happening across the world, it's because this thing is real.
Exactly.
Right.
It is hard,
Right.
and we need to bear witness. Sometimes shit is just shit.
Exactly.
And it stinks.
And it stings. And we don't have to be like, oh, you're being negative. I'm just being
No,
what
it's
is ever
real.
happening right in front of me.
That's
Yeah.
true. Reality-based approach.
Yeah.
We understand the
It's
need
radical
for
acceptance.
I understand the need for like balance with trying
Right,
to
of
put
course.
things in front of people. I've been very mindful of what I put in front of people on social media. But like you said, sometimes we just have to bear witness to things because we need to access that soul work because we're human and we need to understand that this is happening in this world. I'm not saying that I am not going to still try to access joy and have a good time and enjoy my life, but I'm also going to say I'm human and I still have empathy for other humans who are going through things that I can't even fathom. Like it's just too much sometimes. But I do know that people's coping mechanism is to say like to ignore that and not post it, or they don't want to have any conversation about it, or they don't want to touch it at all, and they call it in the name of self-care.
What can we say to people on the topic of obviously what is happening in the world now? What do you all say to people who feel like joy, like they don't feel like they can access joy right now? Because it's like, how can I be happy when like I know people on the other side of the world are in a war zone?
Okay.
I don't know what to do. I'm guilty. I feel guilty because I'm experiencing something fun.
I'm going to have to refer to the great Toni Morrison, to where she says sometimes you have to survive in part. You can't survive in whole.
Yeah.
And
Ooh, I'm gonna say that to my client. That's a good one.
I call it zooming in, which is what I say a lot. It's okay to zoom out and let and so you can know your soul is still intact. These things are going on. You care about them, but what can you do? Make a post, bring awareness to it, and then
Donate funds.
Yeah.
Then you can zoom in
Right.
on your community, your tribe, kind of like thriving in part, I'm gonna say. But Toni said you can't survive in whole. Sometimes as Black people, you have to survive in part. And I'm like, Toni,
Yeah.
you're right, because it's always something.
Yep.
It's always something. But that's our responsibility as Black people. That's why caring for ourselves and taking care of our emotional well-being is a radical act of self-care.
Right.
And it's necessary.
Yes.
And because also us not caring for ourselves does not in any way benefit the people who are struggling.
Right.
That is almost a way of centering
point, T.
ourselves in their struggle, as if me being guilty or being a martyr in this way benefits people in any way. That's not what they're. I don't think that's what they're asking of
No.
you.
No.
Bear witness, feel the feelings, give back in how you can, talk about it when and how you can. But they're not asking for you to not survive and
Right.
protest of them not surviving.
Exactly, because then it ends up being torture.
There
It's
have been some people protesting in a way that have been them taking their own lives and setting themselves on fire, though. But I think that just got to be too much for them people. Because there have been two, right? Somebody set themselves on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't he was it the one in
was a
Washington, D.C.?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No,
wasn't it?
active. He was active. I don't know. I don't know about the.
But it
second
wasn't. It was as an act of protest.
Mm-hmm.
I think there've been two people who brought harm to themselves.
Yeah,
in this,
I
in this
yeah.
situation.
But also, not to encourage that. That's an overt act. That is something that the world's seen, and that is something that maybe cause some type of different movement. Us being guilty or I can't have joy. You're not making no type of big stance with that. That's not making. That's no forward movement.
Yeah,
So what about the people who completely ignore it?
that's a hard one.
Amanda Seales said,
I can't.
no matter what you say, you can't cop this out with self-care. You have to care
No.
about people.
Yeah, I can't vibe with it if you don't, at the very least, acknowledge what's happening.
I think people are scared.
I
They don't know what to
people are
do.
scared.
They feel helpless. It's too much for them.
And truly, we're in a privileged space.
Agreed.
So like it's so far away where it doesn't affect it doesn't affect their day to day.
I mean, if you're truly conscious and know things, you would say, where did they learn this from?
Yeah.
Nobody's thinking about it.
I'm thinking about it like that. I'm like,
Well, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, we could go on and on with
Emotions.
that.
Okay. I want to talk about crying for a second because crying is something that makes people uncomfortable. When somebody else do it, some people are uncomfortable with their own cries. But crying is it's a behavior response to an emotion.
Yeah.
Whether it can be joy or sadness. How do you guys
Or
handle
pleasure.
or pleasure? Yes, ma'am. Put the P on pleasure.
I mean, because you keep leaving out pleasure, and I feel like pleasure is one of the most
I stated pleasure in the
important,
beginning.
beautiful emotions.
Yes, it is. Yes,
That's
it
all.
is. I'm wishing it for you.
Oh.
I mean,
Tea
pleasure.
is hot, baby.
Anyways, how do you ladies handle tears in the therapy room?
Oh, I give the space. First, I joke with my clients all the time. I'm like, if you say sorry for crying, I'm gonna charge you $1. They'll like
like
the mood a
that.
little
I
bit.
like that too.
I was like, I
I'ma
would be a
steal that.
very rich
Because
woman.
they always say sorry.
I'm sorry. I will be a very rich woman if the amount of times clients have said sorry and I charge them $1, I would be a very rich woman. So like, take your time, and I'll literally say nothing is awkward for me. I won't stare at you while you cry. Take a moment when you're ready to regroup. We can start over again. And I think being the person to help them navigate that, my hope is that they do that with themselves. Like I experienced it in the therapy room. Hopefully they can start practicing it with themselves.
Okay.
But yeah, I encourage them to not say sorry because you're experiencing something that's either overwhelming.
What about you, T?
I just always say, please don't ever apologize to me for crying. And that's pretty much it. And I just let them have it. It doesn't face anything for me. I'm a therapist that I don't mind sitting in silence. I don't mind sitting
Right.
in tears. I don't really have to fill it with too much where I'll say sorry. I mean, no, I won't say sorry. I will say, please don't ever say sorry to me. And then they'll just keep talking or they'll wait a minute. But I usually kind of just sit there and let them do whatever comes natural for them next.
Right.
Okay. As a beginning therapist, I think I was never uncomfortable with them crying, but I thought I had to feel it with with words.
Yes, that's a
as
good
as a
point.
intern and associate, and as
Yeah.
I've grown and had like supervision, I definitely was taught like you just sit there in silence.
Be patient.
Be patient with them. You don't have to move anything. So when my clients cry, I say take your time. I make sure they have the Kleenex. It's in their eyesight. They can grab it. And now they get to the point where they come in there and they say, you got the Kleenex ready for me? I said, I do.
They know
They
the routine
right
now.
here.
Yeah.
Every now and then I will have to say whenever we're talking about one thing or I am speaking and then that's what prompts tears and maybe that's not what we were talking about, I will say something because it's like when you notice a behavioral shift, then I
Yeah.
will say,
Of course.
hey, I noticed
Yes.
a few
What's
like what
bringing
was
it
coming
on?
up for you.
Yeah, yes,
whenever
that's
I said
different.
that. Then I would ask questions, but outside
Right.
of that,
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I say what's coming up for you, and then also take your time.
Exactly.
Also take your time. But people really appreciate when you say like, sometimes our space is the only space where somebody encouraging them to like feel it.
Yeah.
I don't ever take
To
that
be
lightly.
gentle with them in that way.
Never.
Ever take it lightly.
No, me
I
neither.
tell my clients all the time, and I write it daily in my gratitude journal that I keep on my desk at work, of like, I'm always thankful and grateful for this space that people trust me with
Yes.
literally the most intimate parts of their lives
Yes.
and who they are and their emotions. That is such a huge, I think, responsibility, but it's also
Yes.
such a huge gift. We don't
Yes.
get this. People don't get this from all these people.
No.
We do.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Oof.
It's so
I
beautiful.
agree with you so much. Like, I was thinking about this like last week. A few of my clients had pretty rough weeks, and they were getting very emotional. And even in that moment for me, I'm like, I am so appreciative that you trust me. And I
Yes.
always say that I hope that this was comfortable for you. I know this is overwhelming, but I appreciate that you trusted this space for that to happen. And I think that also continues to humanize them
It does.
in a way that you don't have to rush through this. Like, this time is for you. Let's take a moment.
It's important.
Very.
It's so important. I appreciate y'all for having this conversation because I think it was a good one. Okay. So with that being said, guys, go love yourself.
Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.